for decades, the paper gold and silver market functioned under one assumption, and that delivery would always be easy. But we are seeing that's not the case, and we are seeing a rush for delivery, where paper supply is being challenged by physical reality. And, again, I will just highlight that when you see, in essence, 23 million ounces delivered, but 38 million ounces leaving the vault, 164% of the February 26 delivery demand, that tells you everything you need to know, as far as I'm concerned. And you're right, we are seeing that kind of situation, and it is moving to a system where, a reset is coming in one way or the other. You got Bank of America, again, no one talks about this. Treasury, it's doubled the 10-year Treasury for 25 years. Look at it over the last few years, where it's beat it by 20-fold. And last year, it beat it by, what would that be? I mean, 10-year Treasury was up 4%, silver was up 150, gold was up 70. So, I mean, you're talking massive, massive increase in value, but it has no counterparty risk. So when you talk about countries pushing away from not only the fiscal irresponsibility, but the issues where the United States, if we don't agree with you, well, we'll come in and sanction you or go to war with you. And these are reasons why you're finding, I think, a continued de-dollarization. And although this isn't a word, maybe more importantly, and that is de-treasurization that is happening. The repatriation of gold from the New York Fed and the Bank of England, where they were always kept out of convenience and Western jurisdiction, rule of law, et cetera, but would give direct access to the COMEX and the LBMA, the fact that we see that metal being pulled away from these institutions, to me, is an indictment, the exact same way that we're seeing massive deliveries onto COMEX. And in the month of February, as an example, in silver, it's somewhere in this neighborhood. I didn't look at the final settlement numbers, but it was roughly 29, 30 million ounces of silver were delivered in February into COMEX, which is the same thing we've seen between 30 and 70 million ounces every month for the last 16 months, which is highly unusual, like ridiculously unusual. But in the month of February, almost 15 million more ounces left COMEX than deliveries alone could explain. So now you're seeing metal come into COMEX, which is strange, and then see it leave, which is outrageously strange. How many people really know that? Nobody. No one even knows what Basel III is. No one understands that gold was classified, in essence, tier 1. No one knows any of this stuff, and that's the shame of it all. It's similar to, in my opinion, the lack of coverage. We can talk about what matters, right? To me, if you said to me, Andy, I want to do a podcast, and all I want to know from you is exactly what matters. Well, I could do that podcast in 60 seconds. Done. Drop the mic. And here's what matters, period. You go back to that. From 2017 on, the central banks, which are the most well-funded and well-informed traders in the world, have been buying gold and silver like it's going out of style, with very little in the way of media fanfare. On top of that, furthering that, they have repatriated much of their metal from the Bank of England and the New York Fed. Both of these instances are way outside the realm of what always has been considered normal. When you realize that these are the most well-informed traders on the planet, forget about the most well-funded. They know Wayne Gretzky. They said, "How are you so good, Wayne?" "I never skated to the puck," he would say. "I skated to where it's going." They front ran the reclassification of gold by buying in 2017, 18, and doubling that amount in 2019. In 2018, all the banks that started buying gold and repatriating bought more gold as a group than they did in the 60 years previously combined. In 2018, 2019, that number was doubled, and then just coincidental, the BIS reclassified it as tier 1. Well, if you look at what's happening here, the media has missed the entire story. Yes, they've noticed that gold and silver have outperformed normally in a negative light. Reuters calling silver the devil's metal, and it's 2011 all over again. It's 1980. It's overbought. None of that means crap. The only thing that matters to me is, and this is a massive outlier, right? It's one thing for me to say this, and I did for 4 years, about the central banks. They've been buying, and prior to that, they were all net sellers. And all of a sudden, they're buying and repatriating. That's what led me down the BRICS path. But then you see what's happened since Trump won the election in November of a year and a half ago. And these are the most well-informed and well-funded traders on the planet. These are the traders on Wall Street. Somebody in this circle, and I would argue probably the Exchange Stabilization Fund on behalf of the U.S. Treasury, because just like all of that gold buying and repatriation and accumulation by the central banks was, oh, coincidentally, now it's tier one. Well, how about this one? Let's focus on silver for a moment, because gold has been doing the exact same thing. There's between 3 and 5 billion every month coming in the United States on gold, as unusual as 4 feet of snow in Death Valley in July. And if that were to happen this July, I will promise you, I'll bet you a gold coin that you don't see snowmobile dealerships springing up alongside the highway in Death Valley. It's an anomaly. And the same thing is true here. Now, let me ask you a question. For at least 16 months, we've seen billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of silver come into COMEX. Not one word by the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Not one word. All they talk about after a while is, well, the price, which is the tool of misdirection. Mind you, the story is who is doing this. And in February, where 15 million more ounces leave the exchange than deliveries can explain, who is doing this? And if a mint box of Silver Eagles weighs 42 pounds, it's 500 ounces, who took possession of 38 million ounces of silver in February? What kind of armada of trucks, semi-trucks, pulled that out? And who's running the logistics and the insurance? And where are they planning on storing all of this silver? Is it the Exchange Stabilization Fund? Do you think there's any coincidence that after 16 months, by the way, it's now a critical mineral? And by the way, we are going to put a government-sponsored price floor and a government-sponsored strategic stockpile. Is it coincidence that it came in month over month over month over month over month and not a word about it? Why no word? Because if it is the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which Secretary Brink would have the right to do if it's for national security without getting congressional approval, well, what did we just say that this is? It is a strategic element for national security. So he doesn't have to tell us who it is. And isn't that strange that not a word about this when this is so far outside the realm of what is considered normal?
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's not. So this is the way things go. And by their actions, they're telling us that physical possession and the actual metal itself is far more important than price alone would ever explain. For decades, the paper, gold and silver market functioned under one assumption, and that delivery would always be easy. But we are seeing that's not the case. And we are seeing a rush for delivery where paper supply is being challenged by physical reality. And, again, I will just highlight that when you see, in essence, 23 million ounces delivered, but 38 million ounces leaving the vault, 164% of the February 26th delivery demand, that tells you everything you need to know as far as I'm concerned. And you're right, we are seeing that kind of situation. And it is moving to a system where, a reset is coming in one way or the other. You got Bank of America, again, no one talks about this. Bank of America just came out just the other day and said, Michael Widmer is his name. He's the lead metals analyst for lead metals researcher for Bank of America. He said that they see silver between 135 and 309 by the end of 2026. But how about the fact that we see their head analyst, Michael Hartnett, earlier in the year, whose newsletter is thousands and thousands of dollars that goes to the institutional traders, saying that 25% of your assets should be in precious metals. Or the chief investment officer for Morgan Stanley, who says sell half of your bonds. The 60-40 stock bond platform Wall Street has espoused for 50 years is broken. Sell half your bonds and put the other 20% of your assets into precious metals. Why don't we hear about this? Why don't we hear about Bank of America saying this? And I think these are the questions that people certainly need to ask themselves. I think we have We've put ourselves into a situation where things are going to change, I think, vastly. Things are going to change because there is a realization that that cash is unlimited and that hard assets aren't. And gold and silver can't be printed. Copper can't be printed. Energy can't be printed. And once you understand that, or once people understand that, I think it becomes easier to understand why hard assets matter so much in an age like this, where for decades, markets have been dominated by paper, by leverage, by derivatives, by financial engineering, by narratives, by interventions, by price management. It's getting old already. But I think we're moving back towards a world where physical supply and demand begin to matter a lot more than paper positioning. And when that happens, something very important changes, and that is price begins to reconnect with value. And that's a very big deal. And ask yourself, man, what is the value of a promise that cannot be kept? I don't know. You tell me. And I think that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, I think to your point, they're really trying to front run us on this.
Yes,
that's why they're not publicizing.
That's the coincidence. It just happens that you see in 2017 when the Bundesbank said, give us back all our gold, making a big deal and said, we've been trying to do this for 3 years. But right after that, Bank of Austria, Hungary, Turkey, Poland, the Czech National Bank, the Dutch National Bank, they all did the same thing. Bought more gold as a group the following year than they did in the 60 years previously combined, doubled that amount in 2019. Haven't stopped since, but in 2019, the BIS reclassifies it. Coincidence? No. And is it any more coincidence to see all of the imports into COMEX where less than 1% ever stood for delivery? Now you get massive delivery. Almost all of the open interest stood for delivery in February, the majority of it. And then it's coincidence that a year and a half after it's classified critical? I think not. And if Judy Shelton is right, and they're going to back the long end of the bond market with gold using the Genius Act to control the front end, which I think they will, which neuters all of those people concerned about the Fed chair, this new guy that's supposedly such a hawk. The Genius Act will take care of that in and of itself by suppressing short-term rates. Judy's right that they're going to back the back end of the bond market with gold. Well, that would help explain why all of this gold has been reshored to month over month over month without a word by the mainstream questioning it. And it's far more of a story than what the price has done in and of itself. It is the why, not the what. The what is gold and silver are higher. The why is being missed completely. And any why that they tell you, it's full of shit. It's just so far derived from what it really truly is that people are being led astray and missing out on the most important story that there is. If you understand that the most well-informed traders in the world have been doing this, starting with the central banks, for the better part of a decade, and now the most informed, sophisticated traders in North America, then it doesn't matter what the price does. It only is gyrating to throw you off the scent, the trail off the scent, to buck you off the bull. The why is everything, and these people don't mess around. And it's one thing for it to be a one-off, but it has gone unabated. It has not missed a month since he won the election a year and a half ago, non-stop every single month. And I think that's the story. And that's all you really need to know, is that when people at that level do this, I think it tells you where this is ultimately going.